I kept like thinking of the expression "we're all in the same boat," right? Because Titanic was so big that it was actually several different boats. You know, depending on where you were, really affected your chances and what you even saw. Like the classic Titanic story, because it sank head first, you know, everybody sort of ran to the stern because it was the last part above water, the back. But what happened was the ship actually tipped up to vertical, so a lot of those guys fell. They didn't die of hypothermia or drowning. They died of falling and smashing into something on the way down. I mean, stood on end, the Titanic was like almost as high as the Empire State Building. Well, there wasn't an Empire State Building. The highest building at the time was the Eiffel Tower. But you know, the Titanic was virtually as high as the Eiffel Tower when it was stood on end. But those who made it to the very back could kind of climb over the railing. And because it was vertical, they could stand on the outside of the ship, like upright. And when it sank, they just sort of rode it down like an elevator, right? There was one guy who wrote in his account that he timed it perfectly. Just before the stern went under, he stepped off, and he didn't even get his hair wet. Now, if you were further forward, you saw something completely different. There was a whole bunch of people at the top deck under the first smokestack, right? There were 4. And what these guys saw was that the bow, the front, was just getting lower and lower and lower. And eventually, the bow dipped under, and the water started to work its way up to them. And it just sort of washed them off, this gentle wave. Not even really a wave, very calm night. It was just kind of like the ocean filling in where the boat used to be. Now, at the base of the smokestack, there was this ginormous ventilator shaft, right? And the water starts pouring relentlessly down that ventilator shaft with such force that all these people got sucked under and smashed up against the grating, and they're trying to swim back up again, but the water is just pouring down on them. They're stuck, right? Every single one of those people was about to drown, and then you know what happened? At that very moment, deep within the ship, one of the big boilers, right, the furnaces, exploded, and it created this huge blast of hot air that shot through the ship, blasted these guys off the grating, propelled them all the way up to the surface, and a bunch of them made it onto lifeboats and survived. That's the kind of thing that can only come from research, right? I mean, you can't make that up. It's going to come, it's not going to come up in your alphabet soup one day and give you the idea. It's got to be from research. I was telling the school groups, you know, for Titanic, it was double research, because not only did I have to research the event, but I also had to research the time period, right? Because 100 years ago, people didn't live the way they do today. They didn't dress that way. They didn't talk that way. You know, if you've read all my other books, I'm very into dialogue. I really like to use dialogue to create a character's personality. And you can learn a lot from how a character talks. Even something as simple as, how does the guy say hello? Does he say hi? Does he say, yo? Does he say, what's up? Does he say, how you doing? How are you? I went to high school with a kid. This is true. For 4 years, he never once used the word hello. He always used to say, greetings. And I mean, exactly like that, too. If the phone rings, hello, brief pause, greetings. Well, none of you guys know my friend. Don't you have a feeling in the back of your mind for just the kind of doofus we're talking about, right, based on one word? Well, if you can get that much personality out of a word, think how much you can get out of dialogue. But here's the thing. For Titanic, it was 100 years ago. People didn't use the same kinds of words that we did. People didn't talk that way. You cannot have a couple of guys on the deck of the Titanic saying, dude, the boat's sinking. What's up with that, man? Because people didn't talk that way in 1912. You know where I really really learned to do the time period research was with 39 Clues, right? Because if you think about the Cahill family, they're really historical figures, right? I mean, Mozart and Shakespeare and Ben Franklin. The first 39 Clues book that I did was One False Note, right, book 2. And that was the one where we discovered that Mozart was a Cahill. Well, do I look like a big Mozart fan to you? I mean, even if I do, I don't know much about classical music. It's just sort of not my thing. So I had to research Mozart the same way I researched the Titanic. And, you know, it just goes to show the great stuff you get from research. I mean, my favorite Mozart fact wasn't even about music. It was Mozart died in 1791. At the time, he was flat broke. And in those days, if you didn't have enough money left over to pay for your own funeral, they buried you in what was called a pauper's grave, which basically means they take your body and they dump it in this gigantic pit with like 50 other dead people, and they just plowed you over. And there's no gravestone, and there's no marker, and there's no record of any kind. Guys, Mozart is gone. I mean, nobody knows what happened to the greatest composer in history. So I'm like, okay, I mean, but why was the guy broke? I mean, in the 1700s, musicians didn't get super rich like rock stars, but Mozart was famous. I mean, the guy had money. What was he blowing it on? And when I researched that, you know what the answer was? Nobody knows. Right? And whenever you hear nobody knows, it's a really good opportunity for sort of a very 39 Cluesy what if. You know, what if 200-something years ago, Mozart got mixed up in the search for the 39 Clues, and he became obsessed, and he sank all his money and all his time and all his resources into that. I kind of thought, when I first signed on to 39 Clues, because it was less mine, I would kind of like it less. I think I kind of like it more for that reason. You know, it feels a little bit like I'm less responsible for it. You know, especially with the second series where I wrote book 1 and then I was just done. You know, it was somebody else's problem what happens after that. And I think there is a funness to 39 Clues because of that, because you do your bit and you're totally committed to it when you're into it, but then you're just done. Especially the second series, where we spent the whole first series focusing on the Cahills are the most powerful family in human history. But suddenly, we learn in the second series that they have these rivals, right? The Vespers, this sort of shadowy group that for 5 centuries has been kind of waiting in the wings for their opportunity to stomp across the world stage. And that was the first thing I had to come up with as the book 1 author, was how do they do it? Well, it's pretty cool, a little on the ruthless side. At the same instant, in 7 different time zones around the world, 7 Cahill cousins are kidnapped, right? And the ransom demands come to Amy and Dan, heads of the family, main characters. They have to steal these priceless art treasures from museums and galleries all around the world, or their relatives will be executed one by one. Like in the Medusa plot, we focus on a painting of Medusa by the artist Caravaggio, right? When you get home, Google Caravaggio's Medusa, because you really have to see this painting to kind of appreciate what it looks like. It is quite simply the most disturbing, nasty, ugly, malevolent, hideous image I have ever seen. First of all, it's painted on a wooden shield, so it's a little bit convex, like it's curved, and it almost looks like the face is coming out at you with evil intent. Does anyone know how Medusa died? There it is, yeah. Yes? Right, and how do you do it?
He looked at him with a shield and cut his head.
Cut his head, exactly, head cut off. So Medusa's head has been severed, the neck, blood all over the place. It's pouring out. The eyes are wide and staring. The hair, well, what's the hair? Snakes, yeah. Not much you can do with snake hair under the best of circumstances. Having your head cut off, not the best of circumstances. But look, the Vespers are an evil organization, so you can kind of see how ugliness appeals to them, but still, they're not art collectors, right? I mean, their goal is nothing short of world domination. How does a painting, any painting, help you dominate the world? And that's what I had to come up with. And I just sort of stared at Caravaggio's Medusa. It's weird. I was not turned to stone, but the longer I looked at it, the more the snakes started to look like a map, kind of, right? Like the long serpentine bodies were pathways. I thought, okay, what if Caravaggio's Medusa was more than just a painting? It was actually a secret treasure map, and the snakes correspond to the ancient tunnels underneath the 2,000-year-old Roman Colosseum. And that's what's so much fun about 39 Clues is, yes, it's a fictional made-up series, but we're always looking to tie it in to real pieces of history and geography and fact.